whoever tried the hijab challenge. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I would like to start off, since we're having technical difficulties, we'll just start off with our speaker. You guys kind of got to interact with her a little bit, but Maryam Amirebrahimi has a strong background in leadership and is a passionate advocate for social justice. In high school, she was ASB president and was personally recognized as Student of the Year by former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. In college at SJSU, she was vice president of her MSA and was president of her MSA for 2 consecutive years. In college, she worked as a diversity advocate intern and an AmeriCorps member with youth in the inner city. Upon graduating with magna cum laude with a BA in Child and Adolescence Development, Maryam partook in an 11-month abroad study in Cairo, Egypt, where she studied the Holy Quran and learned and became fluent in classical Arabic. Upon returning from Cairo, she entered the field of education and earned her California multi-subject teaching credential from UCLA. Maryam lives in Los Angeles with her husband and is a Master's of Education candidate at UCLA. She works to create access to higher education for high school students through the organization MAPS. Maryam holds a 2nd-degree black belt in Taekwondo and is an outspoken proponent for women's rights and justice for underprivileged communities within the field of education. Please welcome Maryam Amirebrahimi.
Thank you for reading through all of that. Okay, so what do you see when you look at me? Do you see someone limited or someone free? All some people can do is just look and stare, simply because they can't see my hair. Others think I'm limited and unliberated. They think I'm controlled and uneducated. They are so thankful that they are not me because I don't fit their definition of free. Those words are a beginning poem of an anonymous woman who wears hijab, which very much mirrors the feelings that a lot of us who wear hijab have. That sometimes people look at us and they think we're oppressed, and sometimes they think we're uneducated, sometimes they feel like we're forced to do this. But really what hopefully we'll learn today is that this is something that we find extremely liberating and something that we choose to do. So what we're going to do is first I want to tell you about my personal story on how I started wearing hijab and what it means to me. And then we're going to do Q&A and we're going to go into experiences of those who actually partook in the challenge. Who partook in the challenge today? Raise your hand. We're going to ask you to share your experiences as well. So I was born into a family where my parents had both researched Islam and embraced it when they were in college. My dad was at UC Davis, my mom was at Iowa State. And both of them had come from some type of Islamic background, but they never really had been raised or learned the religion itself. So when they went to college, again, my dad was at UC Davis, my mom was at Iowa State, they both had roommates who were extremely passionate Christians. And it was the first time that they had really started thinking about religion because of the influence, the extremely beautiful influence of their roommates. So they started going to church, started reading the Bible, and that started making them research other religions. So they looked into Hinduism, Buddhism, all these different religions until they read the Quran. And both of them, in 2 separate times, my mom is actually older than my dad, they, in 2 separate time periods, decided that they both wanted to fully embrace and live Islam. So by the time I was born, I'm born into a family that has cared about Islam. They've conscientiously chosen to be Muslim. And I'm born into it in Central Cal, Tulare, California. Any Tulares? For real? Where?
Riga.
Where's that?
It's right next to Tulare.
Oh wow, I was only there for 3 months, so. But normally when I'm I'm from Tulare, I'm what country is that in? And they're Arabia? No, not even close. Anyway, so I was born in Central Cal, but I was raised in NorCal. And I mean, I think a lot of the women in this room can probably associate with these experiences that I had when I was growing up. My excitement wasn't ooh, I'm going to grow up and wear hijab one day. I was ooh, I'm going to grow up and be Britney Spears one day. Right? Did any of you have those similar thoughts? Oh, yes. Normally more people raise their hand. I'm sure you're thinking it deep down inside. All right. So as I'm going into middle school, I was going into 8th grade. my cousins were going to visit. And my cousins, some of them wore hijab. And them wearing it was a big deal to me because they're in college and in high school. And you know when you're younger, like older people are really cool, like when they're that age? So I thought if I would put it on, they'd also think I was that mature. So the day they came from the airport, I put it on. And when the summer finished and they left and I went back to middle school, my 8th grade year, I was like, what in the world did I do? There are hundreds of people in my middle school and I'm the only one who's covered. So, I mean, imagine, like, remember middle school days. Wasn't it kind of already awkward? Yeah? So now imagine me like, hi, I look really different. And it really sucked. I hated wearing it. I hated wearing it. And I remember my mom was like, are you sure you're ready for this? And I was like, oh yeah, for sure. But once I actually put it on, it was a huge struggle. So that process made me start really questioning who I was. Because especially when my identity is so open, everyone starts judging me based specifically on that, right? So it's not like, oh, Maryam, like, you have a, you know, this quality, or you have this ability, or whatever. It's like, oh, you're Muslim. And that was before September 11th, so no one really knew what Muslim was. They really had no clue. So it was just a very, very awkward experience, already an awkward time period. And it was when I started really thinking, like, is this really the right religion for me? Because if it isn't, for example, if my friends who are Christian, if they don't have to wear it, and if I can practice that, then I'm not going to have to be forced to do this. Forced as in, I felt myself that I wanted to do it. Even though I didn't like it, because I had started, I wanted to continue it. And you're going to meet people like that, who do something because they feel like they've committed to it, even though they don't necessarily like to do it. And eventually, they might want to stop because they feel like they're going through a process where they finally feel like this is really not for them. But at that point, I hadn't gone through the process yet. I was just questioning. So going into high school, think high school. What were some of the things you guys were looking for in high school? What were some of your greater aspirations?
ASB.
Okay, you wanted to be in the ASB? That's great. All right, what else?
It's high school.
Huh?
Being everybody's friend.
Being everyone's friend. What's another word for that? Popular. Okay, what else? What other things are you looking for?
Theater.
What?
Yeah, theater.
Theater?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Like drama?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, what else?
A boyfriend.
Good grade.
Okay, like relationships. Yes. What else?
Sports.
Sports. Prom. Okay. Did someone say good grades?
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, will that ever make it to the list? It's like you Facebook your friend, like teachers from high school. The only thing we cared about in high school. All right. So going into high school, what was really, really important to me was being very popular. And because I was covered, I was like, I'm going to make the dream of being the most popular hijabi in the whole school. That was a really, 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 really big objective of my life at that point. So I would walk around, and I mean, I like meeting people. It's something I really enjoy doing. But there was also a greater purpose behind it. It wasn't like, oh, let me meet everyone because I'm so nice. It's, oh, let me meet everyone because eventually, hopefully, I'll know lots of people. Does that make sense? How many of you did that? That's right, I knew it. Okay, so by the time I'm finishing freshman year of high school, my parents like have a family meeting and they're like, we are going to go on a holy pilgrimage to Mecca. How many of you have seen Mecca before? Just pictures of it. Okay? Wow, lots of Muslims. All right? And people who don't ascribe to the Islamic faith. Okay, awesome. So, my parents were like, we're going to go here. And I knew people who went to Mecca, and when they went to Mecca, they became some like holy person. They came back and became super pious and spiritual. And for me, considering popularity was really important, praying 5 times a day and praying 20 times a day and being super pious just did not seem like they fit on the same scale. Like, who do you know who's really popular and really pious? Do you know anyone? No. I love that. No. I know people now because my vision of popularity is different now. Come on, guys, I'm right here. Me. Got a little too much swag for this room, right? Okay, so the point is that when I was told that we're going to go to Mecca, I wasn't very excited. I remember I was on the track field and I was walking, or I was with someone, and I was like, man, I don't want to change. Because being popular doesn't mean I'm going to walk around and tell the truth all the time and do nothing bad. Being popular means you have to compromise some things in that concept of popularity that I understood going into high school. And especially now, ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you, in high school, females, Can you remember a female that was extremely popular only because of their smarts? Raise your hand if you remember someone in your high school who was really popular just because they were super, super smart. Only. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Awesome. I really hope that the high schools that you guys went to will continue, that model will continue. Because being able to value, especially females, for our intellectual abilities over just what we look like is something incredible that I hope that all high schools are going to aspire to, and our society in general. Unfortunately, though, what I saw growing up was a lot of emphasis on physical looks. Let me ask you again, in your high schools, how many of you saw that the girls in particular who were really popular also had pretty nice bodies?
Or pretty faces.
Or pretty faces, dressed a little cutely. I mean, they had some type of beauty associated to them, right? And so that kind of helped with the whole popularity thing. So the messages I was getting growing up through society particularly wasn't, if you're popular, you are extremely social justice-like. It was, if you're popular, you better look like these hot women, right? Have you guys ever held those messages as women specifically? Yeah? Okay, so now I'm told we're going to make this religious pilgrimage. Fast forward to the summer, we're in Mecca. How many of you have actually been to Mecca before? Okay. Did you guys find it to be a transformational experience? Like a beautiful experience that impacted your heart in some way? Yeah? Okay, so when we're going into Mecca, I remember, there's a picture I would like to show you hopefully once this is up, but basically, there are pillars outside of the great mosque. It's a huge mosque. And I remember as we were in a taxi going up to the pillars, my dad starts to cry. And seeing my dad start to cry really hit my heart. And as we actually get off the taxi and start walking towards the Great Mosque, I remember my dad saying, keep your eyes down. Because what we're going to in the middle is the Kaaba. So the Kaaba is considered a symbol for the house of God. It was built by prophets Abraham and his son Ismail, and Muslims face it all around the world, face that one direction. It doesn't mean that we believe God is in the house or anything like that. We believe God is separate from us, and that he is all-powerful, yet all-loving, and we are so close to him directly through his names and attributes, and we feel close to him that way. But this is basically a place where we can unify, face one direction, and worship him directly. So going to that is surrounded by a great mosque. You have to get to the center to actually see it. So my dad's like, look down, so that once you actually get to it, it'll be the first thing that you see. So we start walking, we're walking with our eyes down. And I remember that my mom and my dad at this point, they're both crying. And I hear them crying, and to hear my parents both crying symbolizes to me that this is a big deal. But I'm literally feeling nothing. I am not feeling anything. And it was the first time that I was like, maybe something's actually like up with my heart. Like, this is supposed to be like some spiritual experience, right? Like, people go to spiritual experiences and then they come back like with some type of high, right? You guys know people who've had some type of experience and come back like elated? Mm-hmm. Yeah? I was feeling nothing. So I'm like, okay, super spiritual experience. So we keep walking, and then finally we get to the very edge where there are steps. So once you get to the steps, there's this huge open area, and then there's the Kaaba, or the symbol of the house of God. So at that moment, I remember when my dad, he said, look up. So we looked up, and it was as if my heart was dead, and it experienced life. Something grabbed my heart that just went like this. I don't have the words to describe it. It just filled it with such incredible tranquility. I felt I could feel like a tangible presence of God. And so it was the first time that I had in my adult life experienced God. And so it was the first moment that I was thinking, perhaps this is actually true. Perhaps God does actually exist. Because I wasn't really like a person who was looking for spirituality. But when it impacted my heart, the taste of it was so addicting that I just wanted it more. You guys know people who get on highs or like drink all the time just because they feel really good afterwards? I don't know what else to compare it to. I haven't done drugs or drank, so I really don't know if this is a good comparison. But I do know that when people do it, sometimes they feel really good and they want to keep going. For me, experiencing this feeling made me feel like, what can I do to keep getting this? So going there, seeing that, changed me. I remember I started to bawl just out of nowhere because I felt nothing, right? And then someone was like, bam! So I started to cry and I was like, oh my God, like, oh God, forgive me, guide me. So that was an extremely incredible experience. Coming back to America though, I'm back in my high school, same set of friends, same everything. Nothing has changed. I've just had an experience, right? So now I'm like, how can I maintain this experience now that I'm in America? And also, is this really true? Do I really want to follow this? Because people can have some type of elation, but it doesn't mean that it's what's true, right? I wanted to find out what's going to be true for me. So I started to read the, what?
Quran.
The Quran. Why did you guess that? Oh, because I'm a devil! Someone said because it's the book of guidance. So basically, in Islam, we see the Quran as a revelation from God through Angel Gabriel to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. We believe that God sent a final message to a final messenger to complete revelations before it. So to complete the Psalms of David, the Torah of Moses, the Gospel of Jesus. We believe that over time these things were changed or they got lost. And so God sent a final book to kind of seal things and allow for the end of time for a message not to be lost, but to complete the messages before it to worship God directly. So that's the book that I started to read because I realized that if I really want to understand what Islam actually is about, then I need to go to the source. So I started reading it. And the more that I read it, the more I started to see myself changing, and the more I saw myself wanting to do things that were different that I hadn't done before. On this slide, you would see a verse from the Quran which talks about the beginning, the creation of men and women, or man and woman.
What passage real quick?
Sorry?
What passage real quick?
Oh, in the Quran?
Yeah.
It's in a bunch of places. You can find it in the 2nd chapter, you can find it in the 7th chapter. I can give you an exact verse as soon as that's up, or right after.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But if you go to the 2nd chapter, it's like on the first 4 pages. It's really soon into it. So it's specifically talking about how God told Adam not to touch that tree, right? But in the Quran, it doesn't just say Adam. It specifies Adam and Eve. So going into researching Islam, a really big thing for me was making sure that the message for women was liberating. I'm a very, very, very passionate advocate for women's rights. And I didn't want to be part of a religion that has anything to say that's negative about women or stifling to women. So it's really important for me to read the Quran and make sure that what it has to say about women is very liberating and empowering for me as a woman. So going through a passage such as God telling Adam and Eve not to go near that tree, and then Satan whispering to both of them, and both of them falling to temptation, both of them eating from the tree, both of them covering themselves because they realized their nakedness once they ate from that tree, and then both of them feeling bad about it, both of them asking God to forgive them, repenting, and both of them being forgiven by God. So for me reading that, because I have a lot of family members and friends who are of different religions, knowing that the way that God presents Adam and Eve in Islam is that of equality, that in spiritual responsibility, that both of them ate from the tree, both of them made a mistake, both of them regretted, both of them asked for forgiveness, and both of them were forgiven. So just starting out, I felt like I already was on an equal playing field. And that continued on because we believe that when a baby is born, that they are born sinless, and that the mistake of people before them, for example, what Adam and Eve did, is just forgiven by repentance, and that each person is accountable for their own self. So that was really big for me, because going into other verses when it talked about accountability, there were verses that talked about the man and the woman both getting the same reward for the actions that they did. There are specific verses that say, I will not, so God is speaking, that he will not allow for the works, the good deeds of any one of you to be lost, male or female. It specifies male or female. And thinking about this, the context that this was revealed is very powerful. Right now, it makes sense to us. We're like, yeah, of course, men and women. Why would you think anything other than that, right? That's part of our culture right now. Even though we see that women are still working to have equal pay, and we are still struggling in a lot of ways, at least that basic framework, we know that we should be considered equal, right? However, we're talking about over 1,400 years ago, in a society where men dominated not only in the sense of government, but in the sense of control of women's worlds. They would bury their baby daughters alive. We're talking about they would they would dig up a grave in the desert, and the baby toddler is like wiping off the dirt from the father's beard, and then the father just puts that baby inside of a grave and just buries the daughter alive. We're talking about men who would inherit women like property, who wouldn't allow them to own their own property, who were using women as sexual objects. This is a society which didn't look to women as individuals who are going to liberate society. They used them, they abused them. That doesn't necessarily mean that there weren't good relationships or that every single man was like that. But in a general sense, the society didn't provide liberation or empowerment for a woman. And so reading these passages in the Quran where they specify women as empowered, or they specify things that have to do with the status of women, was extremely transformational for me. Then continuing on, talking about the political rights, the social economic rights, the educational rights. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught that education is an obligation for every single Muslim, whether male or female. And that should continue on to everyone. It doesn't have to specifically be people who are Muslim. The Prophet Muhammad was once asked, you, ask me, who should I hang out with? Who's like the most worthy for someone for me to hang out with? Ask me that question.
Who is the most worthy for you to hang out with, Maryam?
Your mother, oh no, pretend, oh okay. I didn't mean for you to end that sentence with Miriam. Okay, so, your mother. Who next?
Who next, Maryam?
Your mother.
I'm not supposed to say mine. Who next?
Your mother.
Who after that?
Your father. So many Muslims know this. How many Muslims have heard this before? Okay, this is one of those like, when your mom is like, I'm supposed to be, Mother's so amazing. May God bless all of them everywhere. Amen. So, basically a man comes to the Prophet Muhammad, and he's like, who should I be like best homies with? And the Prophet, peace be upon him, is like, your mom. And then he's like, and then who? Your mom. And then who? Your mom. And then who? Then your dad. You see like how much more the status of a woman is? 3 times more worthy of companionship than the father. Everyone on that side of the room? Y'all got nothing on us. 0. Okay? And then we also see the way that the women were given so many rights. So we talked about women not having so many rights in the society, right? Just like this, just through the revelation coming, through the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, receiving the message, what happened is women started getting all these rights automatically. So for example, the right to choose who to marry. Instead of being forced to marry someone, she now is obligated to choose that person. So we often get the question, do you guys do arranged marriages? In our understanding of what arranged marriage is, where someone is forced to get married, that's absolutely against our religion. But a woman has the right and is actually expected to, it's an obligation for her to choose to want to marry that person. Also, if the marriage doesn't work out, she has the right to ask for a divorce. Additionally, if they do get divorced and she has a baby that she's breastfeeding, she has the right to ask for the husband to pay for her to breastfeed that child. She has the right to ask that. It's just crazy because all of a sudden all these rights start coming in, right? If we look at the economic sense, let me ask you, Muslim women out there. Are you ready for this question?
Let's go.
Are you planning to work as you get older? Yeah?
Yeah. Inshallah. Yes.
Yes. Okay. When you work, are you planning to give all your money to your husband?
No.
You weren't thinking of doing that?
No.
Why not?
You share your money.
Share the money?
Yeah.
Okay, that's because you're generous. For real.
Because alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is protecting our, we get to keep all our income. And that
Right.
the man has an obligation to support the family financially, whereas the woman, in that sense, financially doesn't.
Right. So, my husband, who's sitting back there, can you wave to everyone? That's the love of my life. So, he works and I work. I do work. And he does work, all right? Now, just to clarify, I really do work. So, now my husband, when he's working, that money becomes my money and his money. Thank you. For me, when I'm working, that money is completely my money. So religiously, he's obligated to spend on me. Why did we laugh? What are we laughing at? What are we laughing at? I missed it. I just missed it.
Money.
What?
You're getting a lot of money.
Oh yeah. It's a blessing. Thanks. So basically, religiously, Omar, my husband, has to financially provide for me. If I make money and I choose to spend it in some way on the family, buying groceries, putting gas in my car, whatever, that's considered charity on my behalf. So that's what I meant when I said you're generous, is if you choose to give that money, God's going to accept it as charity, even if it's from your own family. Of course, whatever he does hopefully will be accepted as charity too, but it's just a little more special because it's not an obligation on me, but I choose to do it. Does that make sense? Economically as well, I can choose to own a business, I can run a business, I can hire people, or if there is a financial venue, which there should be, technically a man is always supposed to provide, is obligated to provide for the woman. She can work and she can keep the money, but the financial burden is always on him. So if she chooses to just stay home because that's a financial option for her, she's also welcome to do that. But these are just like a few glimpses of what happens educationally, economically, and also spiritually. Let's look at what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said about women to men. He said that the one who is honored, the one who honors them, is basically like a generous and honorable person. And the person who abuses and debases them is a wicked person. So we see from his examples and from the way that he interacts with people, and that's just a meaning of something that he said, the way he interacted with women specifically was of incredible, incredible kindness and mercy. So much so that everybody would fall in love with him, in the sense of we want to be your best friend kind of fall in love with him. So sweet. All right, so politically, when did we get the right to vote in America? Women. 1920s? Okay, did that happen like, okay, you were teleported like way back in the day. Excuse me, Mr. President, women should vote. Okay, you were granted that. Did that happen? No. What happened? Whoa, what? Suffrage movement. They had to fight. There were people who put their lives completely invested in something like this so that we today could appreciate the right to vote. Let's look at the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Women were actively involved in giving advice to governmental figures and being a part of administrative roles. Women were a huge part of the way that the society functioned. And so we see like all these things, and I'm learning all these things as someone who really didn't know too much, and I'm starting to feel very, very excited, because if this is in relation to all those rights that I'm supposed to be given as a Muslim woman, then I'm very, very honored for the opportunity to express my belief and my certitude in this physically. And so for me, learning about these things made me want to start pleasing God in a way that would be internal and external. I wanted to struggle on the outside because I wanted people to see that I am struggling on the inside. I'm not a perfect person. I make heck of mistakes all the time. Ask Omar, he knows. But I know that if I'm to physically express the fact that I associate with Islam, then people will know as soon as they look at me from like way over there. What's the first thing that you see when you look at that person? You know that they're a Muslim. Muslim in Arabic means someone who submits to God. Unfortunately, right now, they have a lot of other connotations when you see someone who looks like a Muslim. But what it really means is someone who submits to God. And I wanted someone from 20 feet away, from 300 feet away, not to know my name, not to know anything about me, but to be like, that's a Muslim. That's someone who submits to God. And I wanted that because I started to internalize that the things that God has asked me to do as a woman can only be for my own empowerment and my own benefit. So that was a personal transformation for me. However, I do want to clarify that we do not wear this all the time. We are asked if we take showers in it, if we sleep in it. We do lots of other things in it. But we don't! You don't? You guys laughing at my laugh? People laughing at my laugh all the time. Alright. Ooh, the laugh. Okay, so, tell me, when do you think we wear this?
In public.
In public! Yes! Power clap, one! We do wear this in public. We specifically wear it in front of men who are not blood related to us. So if someone is not blood related to me, that's when I would need to put this on. I also don't need to start when I'm 3 years old or 5 years old. This is something that women are obligated to start when they hit puberty, become women, because a guy and a girl see each other differently when they're 3 versus when they're older. However, that doesn't mean that a woman's going to do that right when they hit puberty or whatever time. This is a huge journey. Putting on something like this, as many of you experience today, means a lot of things. People assume things about you. People treat you in certain ways. It's a huge commitment. So just wearing it doesn't mean that this person is better, as more pious or more righteous than another person. It just means that there are different places in the struggle, and each one is struggling with different things. So our religion asks us to start at a certain time, but women choose to do it at different times. It's a choice. It's not something someone should force you to do. It's a choice. But it's something that is obligated on us, just like praying 5 times a day is something that we're asked to do, and not drinking and things like that. Additionally, do guys have to wear a form of the hijab?
Yes.
Oh, girls, you got this covered. Okay, guys, how do you guys wear hijab? No pressure.
Dress modestly, lower the gaze.
Okay, dress modestly, lower the gaze. So men and women are asked to lower their gaze. What that means basically is when a really fine person walks by, you can't be like, ooh, check that guy out or check that girl out. You need to be like, okay, whoa, may God bless me, but better than that, right? So, when we see something like that, we're supposed to respect that individual as a human being and a fellow brother or sister in humanity, regardless of how attractive they are. A lot of times, especially in our culture, it's like, wow, look at that girl's X, Y, Z. Or look at that guy's whatever. But in Islam, we're supposed to be looking at that individual's personality and their intellect, regardless of what they look on the outside, even if it's tempting. So for guys, this is a little bit of a harder struggle sometimes, where when that extremely attractive person comes by, they need to force themselves to focus on their personality or their intelligence instead of anything that has to do with the outer. Additionally, they mentioned dressing modestly. They also have a modest dress code. Ours is just a little different because, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, men and women have equitable status, which means that we are different, but we have responsibilities which are appropriate, what's that word? In connection or in correlation with who we are. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right. Let's see. Trying to think of any other tips I wanted to give you about why we wear this. So, I guess what we could do is just go into Q&A, but before that, I do want to mention that the reason that we wear this is to please God. It's a struggle to submit. It's an outward symbol of our desire to please Him through our gratitude for all that He's given us, especially automatically as women. And so what I want you all to do is to take a second to close your eyes. I'm catching you with your eyes open. I can see you. My eyes are going to stay open. Okay. And I want you to just think of one thing that you're grateful for. Now when you think of that one thing, think about how you could use that one thing in a way that's positive to help the people around you. I chose to wear hijab as a symbol of my gratitude and to help me be more physically and outwardly passionate about helping the people around me. What is it for you? What are you going to do with that one thing you're grateful for? As you think of it, I want you to open your eyes once you're ready. This is a very big task, I know, so it's going to take some time. So as soon as you're ready, take your time and open your eyes. All right, so what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to join me in a social justice chorus. What we're going to say is Si Se Puede! What does Si Se Puede mean? Yes, we can. We can. We've made the commitment. We're grateful for something. We have so many things to be grateful for. Just the fact that we're sitting in this room, regardless of what anyone's situation is, says a lot about things we have to be grateful for. We're given a lot of privileges that a lot of people don't have. So, we've chosen one thing we're going to do with that privilege, and we are going to do it. Because we Si Se Puede! Alright, I want to ask you to do me a favor, to give yourself a huge pat on the back because you sat through all of that and waited for it to start. And now what we're going to do is open up for a quick Q&A. This will be more personal, any personal questions you have for me, or any general questions you have that have to do with Muslim women in Islam. And then we're going to segue straight into the most exciting part, hearing from your actual experiences.